Welcome everyone to the Council for British Archaeologists. This is Archaeology Lecture Series. I'll be tonight's host, filling in for the CBA's president, Raksha Dave. I'm Jeanette Plummer-Cedes, founding member of the European Society of Black and Allied Archaeologists and chair of the judging panel of the Archaeological Achievement Awards for the CBA. Please, as you're coming in, say hello and tell us where you're joining from in the chat. Tonight's lecture will be approximately 45 minutes, maybe a little bit less, to give us plenty of time for questions at the end. If you do have questions, please post them in the Q&A box, and we'll get to them at the end. I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce tonight's speaker, Barney Devine. Barry worked in the Northern Ireland voluntary sector for 40 years and has extensive experience in developing and managing strategic projects in community development, post-conflict mental health, community relations, education and training, economic regeneration, and heritage. He was director of a Peace and Reconciliation Center in Derry, manager of a multi-agency capital program on the site of the Enniskillen bombing, and business manager of the Northern Ireland Centre for Trauma and Transformation in Omagh, following the Omagh bombing tragedy. More recently, he was manager of the Lough Erne Landscape Partnership, where he developed its 5-year funding program and Heritage Conservation Action Plan. In 2014, Barney worked with his local rural community to develop and deliver a heritage program called Battles, Bricks and Bridges, which received the British Archaeology Award for Best Community Engagement in 2016. From 2018 through 2021, he was the coordinator of the Cuilcagh to Cleenish, a great place, which a follow-up community-led landscape heritage program titled, supported by strategic partners, Fermanagh and Omagh District Council, Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland, and Cuilcagh Lakeland Geopark. In 2021, the Cuilcagh to Cleenish Memory Map won the Best Dissemination or Presentation category and the Outstanding Achievement Award of the Archaeological Achievement Awards for the UK and Ireland. Its community-led archaeological dig on Clancy Mullen Fort was also shortlisted for the Archaeological Achievement Awards Engagement and Participation category. Barney is currently a part-time field monument warden with the Northern Ireland Historic Environment Division. And with that wonderful introduction, it's over to you, Barney.
Jeanette, thank you very, very much indeed. Goodness, that was a long introduction. I didn't realize that I had sent you on so much, but thank you. I'm now going to try and share my screen with you all. We did have a little practice earlier, so here goes, and I hope I can get it up for you. And you can tell me if I'm there or not. Is that working for people?
Not yet, Barney.
Not yet. Okay, so let me come back down and see what I can do here. This is what I was worried about. Share. I think that might be it now. Is that working for you?
It is.
Brilliant. Glitch is over. So I'm going to talk about how the project that we did here, as Jeanette said, Battles, Bricks and Bridges, and the Cuilcagh to Cleenish project for us unlocked our rural heritage for positive community development work. And I'm going to outline what I mean by that as we go through it. And I suppose the reason I'm here is, as Jeanette said, we were the winner of the 2021 Outstanding Archaeological Achievement Award. We also won the Public Dissemination or Presentation Award, and then the Clancy Mullen Fort archaeological dig, as Jeanette mentioned, was a runner-up in the engagement and participation category. So we were very, very pleased and honoured to have won those awards. The Cuilcagh to Cleenish project was funded and supported by the Fermanagh and Omagh District Council. The main funder was the Heritage Fund. The lead partner was Outdoor Recreation NI. The local Cuilcagh Lakeland Geopark, and importantly, the two community organisations, Cleinish and Cleenish. And they are two small groups on either side of the River Arnie in County Fermanagh. And for those of you who don't know where we are, the map on the right-hand side will show you that we're right on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. And then the large map will give you a sense of our footprint area. The top of the map in the grey area is in Enniskillen town, the county town of Fermanagh. And the yellow line that you see snaking its way around the lakes and up around the mountain to the bottom of the screen is actually our footprint area. And we just drew that line and we drew our own area in the landscape so that we could work with it. The main places in it are Cleenish Island up here on the right-hand side. Cuilcagh Mountain is down here in the bottom. We have the Marble Arch Caves here, which is a major tourist attraction. And then the hamlets or the urban areas are Ballinalek Village, Arnie and Cleinish and Florence Court. So that positions it for you. It's a rural area, small population, mountains, river valley, and the River Arnie flows the whole way from west to east and empties into Upper Lough Erne, which you may have heard of. And to help you get a sense of what it looks like, there it is. We're looking from Cleenish Island in the east to the southwest on Cuilcagh Mountain, and the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland runs along the top of the mountain. So there is Cuilcagh Mountain, and as you can see, it's a very beautiful rural landscape. I'm going to hit you with the theoretical stuff first. I think it's important that we do this because the work that we have done isn't soft work in a sense. It is community development, and there's a theoretical basis to it. And I just want those of you who are archaeologists who may not know about working in communities with communities, how important archaeology can be in helping the communities to develop. And this is what I'm going to do now for the next 4 slides or so. So what was it all about? Well, the work that we do is essentially community development. And in Northern Ireland, we're doing that in a contested and divided society. But ultimately, it's about connectedness. It's about bringing people together. The activities that we did are always community led. We always use local expertise, of which there is lots, and every organization or a community that you work with will have that. It's also about agency. We're very, very keen to ensure that we're in the driving seat, that we know what we're doing. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a few more slides. It's about landscapes, in this particular case with Cuilcagh to Cleenish, and it's about having fun. And again, when it comes to archaeology, the big push for us in all of this is that the past is about the present. So we're using heritage, we're using archaeology, we're using all of those things to engage with people in the present about the past. The theoretical stuff really begins here. Robert Putnam wrote a book in 2000 called Bowling Alone. And some of you may know that Robert Putnam is a social scientist and a political scientist in America. And he became very, very aware of the decline of participation of people in community activities from a peak in the 1950s and 60s right through to the 70s and 80s, where when the American population really left behind a lot of their voluntary work that they were doing. And he became quite worried about this, and he wondered how he could in some way capture the details of that and possibly present a solution to get more people animated to come out and do what they had done in the 60s and the 50s and 60s. And the same problem is here in Ireland, in England, right across Europe and the Western world. People are less active in their communities. So he came up with a theory called social capital and social network theory. And basically, I don't want to over egg this, but just to let you know that there are 3 different phases of this. The first one is bonding social capital. That's where people in a community come together to form a group. And in doing so, they really get to know each other. They use the social capital within their own local village or town or interest area. The bridging social capital is between the groups. And if you like, we had worked locally within our own group. We then brought the two groups between Cuilcagh and Cleenish together. So we were already bonding and bridging. And then the linking social capital is when groups really work with bigger institutions and policymakers and politicians. So they're very confident at this point, and they really want to be heard, and they really want to drive their own agendas, if you like. So I just want you to know that, because if archaeologists are ever working with groups on the ground, this sort of knowledge will help them to see, well, what can we bring to the communities and how can we help them? And indeed, using our heritage assets and our local social capital, Cuilcagh Cleenish has worked at all three of those levels. Furthermore, I'm going to mention the European Union Faro Convention, which was put out for signature in 2000. It's signed by most European countries, but it's not signed by Great Britain, and it's not signed by Ireland. So it's not signed by Northern Ireland either. But the Faro Convention Action Plan, we really like it very, very much, because the principles therein are really about the community being focused on primarily, but it also then ties in very, very much with what we were trying to do here. And whilst the UK and Ireland have not signed up to it, I think the principles here are something that we should all try to work towards. So it very clearly sees heritage as a resource. It goes beyond the classic concept of heritage experts. It puts the communities at the heart of relationships between peoples, places, and stories, which is really important. And it gives primus inter pares status to the communities. And that's something that we've held very, very dear here in all of our work with outside organizations who've come to work with us. And it also sees the cultural objects and places aren't as important as the meanings and uses that people attach to them and the values that they represent. Again, local people give meaning to these cultural and heritage objects and places. And again, rather than just focusing on the physical protection and management of sites and monuments and buildings, we should also look at the needs of society and the rights of citizens to benefit from cultural heritage through democratic participation. Again, these principles, I think, are cracker. They're really important, and we have held by those throughout the projects that we've done. So what we have really, really done, if you can distill it into all of this, is we can simply call all of that asset-based community development. And there are four little boxes here, and one reads from one to the next. And I think hopefully this will encapsulate what I've just been talking about. So the communities are working well, maybe, but rather than complain about what they don't have, they accentuate the positive. And there's nothing like telling people what you've got rather than what you don't have. So we don't want to present complex masses of needs and problems, but we want to present diverse webs of gifts and assets. And these are usually place-based assets. So people live here for a reason. It is unique and it's special. And that is applied everywhere where people live. Where they live is unique and special. The physical capital that you can draw on are the monuments, the buildings, the natural environment, public and green areas, etc. And the social capital that we talked about earlier is the unique set of skills and capacities it can channel for community development and heritage. And they are all of the people who volunteer, who have capacities and professional skills or time on their hands, who want to contribute and to help out in whatever way they can. So we just call it ABCD, asset-based community development. So what were our initial heritage assets? Well, as I said earlier, we began with a project called Battles, Bricks and Bridges, and it ran from 2014 to 2016. And the assets that we had was vibrant, positive communities, both Cleenish and Cuilcagh. We also had a person called Henry Glassy. He's the man in the middle at the bridge with the wonderful moustache, and I'll talk about him in a minute. We also had a battle site, which was a battle held in 1594. We had a bridge that was hit by a lot of drunks in their cars coming out of our local pub and was really, really badly damaged. And we also had a tradition of brick making in the area. Now, the project that we did, we didn't know where the battle was. We didn't know how to go about fixing the bridge, and we certainly couldn't make bricks again, but we had a really good go at all of those things. So we brought in Queen's University Archaeology, we brought in the Historic Environment Division. We successfully located the site of the Battle of the Ford of the Biscuits, where the Maguires, the Irish Gaelic chieftains, took on the English coming up to relieve Enniskillen Castle at the beginning of the 9 Years' War. And we located that through local folklore and folk memory, where the experts said that they knew where it was and it wasn't, and we knew where it was and we were right. The bridge, we got dated as one of the earliest plantation bridges in Ulster, and we got it repaired, listed and restored. And we went on to make traditional bricks again, firing our own kiln and involving the whole of the community. And what we got out of all of that was we became, as Jeanette said, a British Archaeology Award winner in 2016. That gave us huge confidence. And it was at that point that we were then approached by Outdoor Recreation NI, which is a regional organization who wanted to work with us. And I want to briefly talk about this man, because this man is very important. Some of you may know or have heard of him, Professor Emeritus Henry Glassy from Indiana University. He's an ethnographer, a folklorist, ethnomusicologist, and a vernacular architect. We were highly privileged that he lived here in Arney, in this area, from 1972 to 1979. He produced 4 books. Not only is he very knowledgeable about his own field, but he's also a great writer. And he's probably one of the best writers in Ireland in the second half of the 20th century. Wonderful, gifted writer with great insight. He wrote about the bricks, the battles, the stories, the saints, and rural life and customs of this area. And because he focused on a 3 square mile patch of land just north of the River Arney, which flows through our footprint area, to me, it's a form of deep mapping. And we drew upon his work massively. And indeed, the information that he had in many, many ways helped us identify the old battle and also how to make our bricks again. So moving on from battles, bricks, and bridges, the project that we won the 2 Archaeological Achievement Awards for in 2021 is called Cleenish. And we had 2 main aims. The first aim was to deliver the community-led heritage projects. And they ranged right across the built, archaeological, natural, and cultural themes, and also to connect our people, our local people, to the heritage that they have around them. And we did this pretty rapidly, actually. We moved from battles, bricks to bridges, battles, bricks and bridges, which was a local heritage project, to working then on a landscape scale. And it was really about 10 miles long by about 6 miles wide, so 60 square miles overall. We worked with local groups, local history groups, local community groups, sports groups, for them to identify the projects that they wanted us to work with them on. And they came up with 18. Local history groups, of course, were key in all of that. And what we carried out a heritage audit. And that was an important piece of work because we discovered lots of new things that we didn't know about. And it was a very rich document, and it gave us license then to go to our funders and say, look, we found out more about this place than we knew. If you give us flexibility in our funding, we might even be able to do some of the extra things. And they were very much up for that, particularly during COVID. So some of our C2C heritage projects. We had loads of history talks. We had crafts training, storytelling, reminiscing. We had a shared education program with our 4 local schools. Because our schools here are segregated, it's very important to bring the local schools together wherever you can. And of course, heritage is a big draw for that. So we had about 120 kids working with us throughout the whole of the program. As I say, we did our heritage audit. We also did our memory map, local history group cluster, etc. And we had 18 in total. The first one was a major concert. We drew lots of artists and musicians and poets and storytellers into the Marble Arch Caves. This is a large complex of underground caves and rivers that flow down through the area. We recorded that, and it was a wonderful evening. And people walked from station to station where the artists were performing. We also wanted people to really get into their natural heritage here. And most people living along the Arnie had never been on it. So we organized loads of trips down the Arnie in canoes. We got young people doing photogrammetry of ancient monuments and sites and artifacts. We got them down to fish and so on and so forth. Anything to get people out and about along the River Arnie. The community-led archaeology was particularly interesting for us. When we did our Battles, Bricks and Bridges project previously, we identified a fort that was on the River Arnie, and it didn't fit with the usual sort of typology of a hill fort or a ring fort or a rath or whatever. It just didn't fit that. And we wondered what it was. So part of what we put in for the funding for was to do a dig on it. So we worked with the Historic Environment Division, and we did our dig. And these are pictures just of turning the first sod with our landowners. We had over 300 volunteers and participants. But the outcome of it was really interesting. It was the first Gaelic moated site uncovered in Ireland. Now, moated sites are usually associated with the Normans, but the Normans didn't come this far north. The nearest location for the Normans is about 20 miles south of here, where there's a motte and bailey on the River Erne, but they didn't come this way. So this was one that was adopted by the Gaelic chieftains called Maguires, and we reckon it was occupied from about 1450 to about 1550. And there's a paper currently in preparation for that. And one of the things we always do with everything that we did, whether it's the history talks or the battlefield archaeology or this digging archaeology, we feed back loops to the community all the time. And these are critical because this keeps the energy and it keeps the capacity of people to bring what they think to the table and to argue the toss. And they're always great fun. And we have, whenever the archaeologists come, they have to be on their finest mettle because they're put through everything very, very sharply indeed. We also had an artist program. We had an artist who came along and worked again with our local school kids, used the Arnie clay to make pots and plates and so on and so forth, to make a link with a woman who had a dresser, and we made pots and plates for a mock-up dresser for her. But then we also had a playwright came who wrote a play about the area, which was absolutely fantastic. Local history walks and talks are a very, very vibrant point of all of this. Again, access is an issue for us, which I'll be talking about soon, but we really did bring a lot of people out to walk and to see the area. People on the left there are looking at Atlantic rock art, of which we have quite a lot in Cuilcagh Mountain. The middle pictures are one of our public talks about an old ruined 18th century Georgian mansion house. And then the other ones are connected with people getting up into the mountains and seeing what we have around the place. The biggest project that we didn't do, and I wish we had have done, lots of people locally have lots of artifacts in their houses, but they're quite nervous about bringing them out because they think the police will take them away. And a lot of people think that because they don't know how the law works around fines. So we did find our own artifacts when we were doing Battles, Bricks and Bridges, two of which were a Bronze Age axe head and a Bronze Age sword. But we have other artifacts in the area that we worked with the Enniskillen Museum to pull in and to draw back for us if we could. But COVID got in the way and this didn't happen. That piece there, by the way, is a late Bronze Age gold lunula, and it was found on the Arnie River in the 1920s. So maybe we'll get that happening again at some point. And then, of course, we had COVID, and COVID really sent us reeling. There was nothing that we could do. We couldn't talk to people, so we turned digital completely. And we made a short film for National Heritage Week, and it won an award for that. And that was also then part of our memory map. We didn't want to hang around, so we got some more digital activities up and running as well. We realized we had 8 churches up along the Arnie. Nobody had ever really, calibrated that one. So we quickly got all 8 churches signed up, and we went and we recorded all the bells, which is a very nice thing to do, actually, because some of the bells were not in great shape, and some of the churches, the church bell towers were not working. So we managed to get them all for the recording, and we were very, very pleased about that. And they too are on the memory map. And this is the map. And this is what won the archaeological award, for which I'm actually talking tonight. And we have 120 locations on the map. It's very interactive. We keep adding to it. And most of the films and the recordings were made by us during the period of our 2 projects. And I'm just going to give you a little quick look at it here now, if it's going to work for me. If you have volume, I suggest you turn it up. If you have headphones, I suggest you turn them on as well and put them on your headphones. We're particularly pleased because the sound quality that we got was very, very good. I'm going to go to the first one here, which is Battles, Bricks and Bridges, which was our major project. And as you can see, whenever you click on an item, it'll hone into where it is on the map. And in this case, we have a little narrative box. We have a video, and I'm going to go to a part of this video that I think is the most important part, in that I'm going to give you a little taster of Henry Glassy when he visited Arnie.
And writer, Professor Henry Glassy. In 1972, Henry spent a whole year living amongst the communities in the townlands from Rossdowney and Jumbargy to Germain and Sesha, collectively known as Ballymonone. As part of the Battles, Bricks and Bridges project, Henry returned to Fermanagh to talk about the past and meet old friends.
Well, I think if I have to supply a name for myself, or some kind of a label, I would call myself a folklorist. And it was as a folklorist when many years ago I came first to this district in the county Fermanagh. I chanced to have in front of me the 2 books that I've written on Ballymonone. Actually, I wrote, there are really 4, but these are the 2 main ones. This is the first of them, and this is the second of them. The first of them, Passing the Time in Ballymonone, effectively is a full ethnography. The later book, The Stars of Ballymonone, was somewhat governed by the fact that there's a CD with songs and stories and the like, and so that this book really features the oral literature of the community, whereas this book talks about everything.
How does Henry feel about the locally held belief of Sesha as the crossing point and the Red Meadows as the battle site, now looking very probable?
I'm not surprised. But it doesn't surprise me for a reason that I think is worth a minute's talk. And that is that generally what one thinks about a community's historical knowledge is that these are people that have heard vague old stories and are repeating them. That's not true in this community, and it's not true in many communities in the world. This is a community in which the historians named themselves historians, thought of their work as being professional, even though it was oral, and thought of their work as necessary because they didn't believe that the history in books accurately represented their community. I guess it was only yesterday, John Owens, Hugh Patrick Owens' son. Okay, I just put that one in because it's an hour and a half long, and it is the documentary film that we made out of battles, bricks, and bridges. We trained up a group of young people to go out and interview older people. And I'm going to play this one for you here now. It's called Saying the Hail Mary as Well as the Best of Them. And it's a lovely woman called Viola Wiggins, and she's talking about her school days.
You see, I went to Cleenish school from 1934, 1938. I was 4.5 when I went to Cleenish school, and I used to ride the horse as far as the top of Gortatole Hill. And then Pete Riley was the postman, and he used to bring the horse home, put his parcel bag on the horse. Then we'd walk on to Cleenish school. But then in 1942, Doreen was going to Ballinamallard to go to Enniskillen Tech and Model and Tech. She was going to Granny's in Ballinamallard to stay there. So Bayram and I were put to Belcoo School. And Master Ferguson called her over on the Saturday morning that we were starting on the Monday, and he says, don't send the children to school till 9:30 because the first half hour is religious instructions. My mother pulled herself up to her 5'1", and she says, Master Ferguson, my 2 children will come at 9 o'clock. I have no objection to them sitting in for religious instruction. And if you can make better Catholics out of them what I have made Protestants out of them, you're welcome to them. And that was the sort of attitude my mother and father had. They were cross-community from the very beginning. And I can go to a funeral now and say Hail Mary and a rosary with the best of them.
Viola is a wonderful, wonderful woman with great reminiscences. I'm just going to play you a very, very short one here now as well. And it's about the bricks that we made. And it's the local BBC reporter, Julian Fowler. And Julian made a very quick, snappy, wonderful report for us.
An all but forgotten tradition. Brickmaking would once have been a common sight in the fields around Fermanagh. Arnie brick was used to build many old buildings in Enniskillen. It was back-breaking work, supplementing the family income.
You were looking at 4,000 brick, 3,000 bricks certainly being made every day, and the kilns that they would have fired were 40,000. So these were big structures being fired up in the fields, taking a lot of effort for very little income, but it was part of that cash income that they couldn't have got anywhere else.
Of course, back then they didn't have washing machines, but getting covered in clay these days is all part of the fun.
Slam it down into the mold, and then it comes out like that there.
And what do you like about it?
Like it, and dirty.
Although much of the local brickmaking knowledge has been lost, some were continuing a family tradition.
All the old buildings around the farm were built by the local brick. And of course it was hard work because they built each farm in those days. This would have been in the 20s, would have produced about 25,000 brick every year.
The kiln was lit by a man who remembers seeing the last kiln here as a young boy.
Because I was brought from the classroom by the master Curry, to see what he said he thought would be the last kiln of brick that would be burned in Fermanagh. And he was right, because there wasn't one burned in Fermanagh since this.
Having been baked for 3 days and then cooled down, it was time to see if the bricks had fired. And this is the finished brick. They may not be good enough to build any houses with, but the community here have had a lot of fun reconnecting with their past. Julian Fowler, BBC Newsline, Arnie.
And there you go. So that gives you a little bit of the memory map and what we were trying to do with it. I'm coming on then to the next slide, which is the community trails that we were doing. We developed possible 11 trails, which were identified by local people. We approached landowners and we developed 3 trails in total. I just want to give you the context here because Northern Ireland is actually very different from the rest of the UK. We have, in England and Wales, there's 144,000 miles of walking trails and bridleways. Scotland has the right to roam, but Northern Ireland has only 123 miles of right-of-way. So we have a very different feel about access here. But we've got over 16,000 sites and monuments, and 2,000 of them are scheduled. And we have no heritage plan at the assembly level nor at local council level. So most of our landscape heritage is invisible and inaccessible. So one of our aims was to give people access to local heritage. And we did it, as I say, we developed 2 walking trails. We have the Arnie Battlefield Trail up around the Battle of the Ford of the Biscuits. And we have the Nixon Hall Trail, which was that 18th century Georgian mansion, which I mentioned earlier on. And these are just a couple of the interpretation panels for the Nixon Hall Trail and for the Arnie Battlefield Trail, which we incorporated with the brick making as well, are in those. The other one which we are currently working on is a very, very big one. The Arnie River connects 2 lakes and comes down into Upper Lough Erne, and it's 27 miles long. And we're currently putting in the first of several facilities that will connect all of that together in a cross-border canoe trail. And it's going to take some time, but it's a major piece of work, and it is designed to let people in along the river and get access to their natural heritage. And of course, it'll be very popular for people coming to the area as visitors as well. Now, so what? What does all of this mean? What did we actually do here? Well, we did actually quite a lot. We appointed an external evaluation team, and they came up with this. The impact that we had was that the social return on investment was that for every pound invested in the project, we generated approximately £12 of social value. That's pretty high. That's actually very good. And then all of the other bullet points there are just about the participants and what they felt, that the projects were excellent, that they were important. It allowed them to be much more involved in the local community, and it made them feel more connected to their local heritage and history. And then, as I've said, the community trails, 2 of our walking trails are complete, and the canoe trail is, as we speak, going to be on the ground over the next 18 months or so. So we delivered all 18 projects. We engaged roughly about 1,650 people. The funding that we secured was coming in at around £830,000, probably up to about £1 million by the time we get the canoe trail completed. We had 105 volunteers, and then we had other contributions that they put into it, and the non-cash contributions as well from the council. We're very pleased that we won 2 of the Archaeological Achievement Awards. We won the British Archaeological Achievement in 2016. We're also cited by ICOMOS, the International Commission or Committee on Monuments and Sites, in one of their books as being a model of best practice. And then we're also cited in some of the policy papers. I would also like to give the British Archaeology magazine a plug. We're very, very pleased that we feature in this month's edition. It's a 6-pager. Delighted to have had the opportunity of working with British Archaeology magazine, and I think they've done a wonderful piece of work on that. There are so many people that I could ask or that I could thank, but these are all the people that were involved in Cuilcagh to Cleenish. I won't go into them, but they all know who they are. And again, I would like to thank them. I would also like to finish in a sense with a poem by an Irish poet, John Montague. He's very, very well known. This is a very well known poem as well in this part of the world, and it's called A Lost Tradition. And he talks about the whole landscape, a manuscript we had lost the skill to read, a part of our past disinherited, but fumbled like a blind man along the fingertips of instinct. And that to me is an important piece of thinking around the landscape that we have here. We are losing it in the sense that we can't get access to it. The project that we have worked on has striven to give us access. It's striven to give people a sense of how important they are in the place. The stories that they have told are extremely important in the connection to it. I would just like to say again, thank you to everybody. Our website is there. Please go on it, enjoy the memory map. Take a long time to go through it, but get yourself a glass of wine or a beer and headphones and enjoy this place we call Cuilcagh to Cleenish. Thank you very much indeed, Jeanette.
Thank you so much for this, Barney. It's been absolutely amazing. I'm sure we could talk and pick your brain about this for so long, because you've demonstrated with this project that really within these kinds of projects, there's something for everyone, isn't there? Whether, you know, depending on your kind of interest, people might not realize what archaeology can encompass. And I think this just beautifully portrays that you can come at it from so many different angles.
Yeah, I mean, we had young people, we had school children, we had teenagers, obviously lots of adults and lots of older people, but we had landowners who gave us permissions and access. We had the funders, we had the local council and councillors, we had the geopark people, and the partnerships that we created were just fantastic. And the impact, I think, that we made right across the place, because people know what you're trying to do. And because of that issue that I mentioned earlier about access, and landowners here wouldn't be as open to giving access, because we were local, because their kids went to school, because their kids went on the dig, because their kids were involved in the activities. They knew about what we were trying to do. They heard it at the kitchen table about the kids digging and finding things in archaeology. So whenever the trails were being looked at as possible and we went to them, they said, oh yeah, we heard about that, this is great, this is our local community, and yeah, we think it's important that people get access and so on and so forth. So by having this in the community, and it's been done by the community with help from others, then it does change lots of things.
We've got quite a few questions in the Q&A, so I will just sort of start in order. We've got one question from Claire. What do you think the legacy of the project has been in terms of how the local community continued to engage with the heritage and landscape?
Yeah, that's a good question. We actually left a legacy plan. Part of the Heritage Lottery Fund requirement is that we leave a legacy. So we worked with the Cuilcagh Lakeland Geopark to work up a legacy plan, and I'm currently working on that at the minute. And the legacy plan is to take the principles of the Faro Convention and to look at the whole of the mountain of Cuilcagh. We were only working on the slopes of Cuilcagh Mountain on the northern side, on the Northern Ireland side. We weren't working on the Republic of Ireland on the other side of Cuilcagh. With our legacy plan, we're going to work right around the whole of the mountain and bring out the built archaeological and cultural heritage of the mountain on both sides of it. And the legacy is to put in place a big application which will get all of the communities around the mountain working together to do something like we did on our footprint, which is only one part of that bigger footprint.
That's absolutely amazing. And that's one of the things that makes this project as well so incredible, is the ability to apply it to other communities as well. And to follow with that, there is a question, what would be your one top tip for any community looking to run a similar project?
That's a good one. I would say be very confident about what you have. As I said at the outset, every place is unique. Every place is special. What you have, where you live, will be fantastic. You might not know what you have. That's why you do your heritage audit. You gather it all up and you select what you want to do. And you'll get very quickly, you'll get really confident. But what I would also say to you is have your own agency. It's really important that you're the experts. You know what you know about your place. You know who could come and help you. You know where to go to find out about various things that you may want to pull out and use. And that when you bring in people from the outside, whether they are universities, whether they are local councils or whatever, that you have to be confident enough to say how you want it done in your own way. And I think that's a critically important part of all of this. People are experts, and you can see if you go into our memory map where we interviewed local people, we have local geologists, we have local anthropologists, we have loads of different people who we interviewed where they were being interviewed in the field on the mountaintop, and they could all talk professionally about what we had in this place. Everywhere has those people. Pull them in, use them, record them, get all of that together and build up your own sense of your own place. That's what you do.
And following also from that, which kind of applies, could you talk a bit, Jane Gibson has asked, if you could talk a bit about the origin of this specific project. Did you have an idea and then look for a place, or did the place look for someone to help them with their story?
The origin of these two projects began with our ethnographer, anthropologist, folklorist who wrote those books. Henry Glassy, for me, was the inspiration. I moved to this area maybe 12 years ago. And when we were building our house, someone gave me his book and I couldn't believe it. It was like a Hollywood movie. The stuff that he wrote about here was wonderful. The Battle of the Ford of the Biscuits, that reads like a Hollywood movie. Wonderful. The brick making, he wrote about it in such a heroic way that these people worked so hard to make the brick and how they made the brick. But then he talked about the saints. He talked about the battles. He talked about the traditions here of unionism and loyalism and republicanism and the difficult days, the dark days. That was all in there. So you'll probably find that wherever you are, you will have local history organizations who will have written books about the place. There will be others who will have come in and written books about that place. So you will get your inspiration from reading or from finding out or from talking and about being connected. Have conversations, find out about your place, and it'll spark your interest. Without a doubt, it's going to spark your interest. But that's where the inspiration, I think, actually comes from. And for me, it came from that, Henry Glassy.
And this is my question, because I'm always interested in showing that archaeology can be so much more than just digging, right? Do you think that this kind of approach can sort of broaden the perception of what archaeology is to people who just don't think that it applies to them on their daily lives, on their personal struggles?
Yeah, that's something I'm very, very pleased that you asked about. I really think archaeology has a lot to learn here. I mean, I said somewhere in there that, the past is about now, it's about the present. And I really think that archaeologists are missing a trick. I really do think that if archaeologists could just get a sense of the community, of community development, and that's why I went into those processes, looking under the engine, how all of this works. If they can see themselves as not only coming in as experts to work with the communities, but actually coming in that primus inter pares, that they're coming in to work with people who know what they're talking about, who know what they want, who are asking the archaeologists to add value to their communities. And as you can see, that value is massive. It engages people, it brings in a sense of connectedness, it inspires young people, it inspires older people. It also shows local people that they are in an important place, that their place is unique, it's special, but it's also contributing to community development and health and well-being and participation, involvement, all of those things. And whilst I'm not saying that archaeologists should go and train about how they should do social networking and social theory, I think just having that awareness that they're bringing something to the table and that something can play a bigger role in the community ultimately and add value in ways that they hadn't hitherto thought about.
I absolutely love that. And I think you're absolutely right. And I think I've seen that, and I would love to talk to you more about that, but we do have quite a few questions. And we've got a couple of technical ones regarding, one is, what kind of software did you create? Did you use to create the memory map? Because Beth Asprey says it's fantastic. And another slightly technical, sorry, just so that you can go ahead. We're from Fiona Ford. Were project leaders appointed by each project by a board drawn from all stakeholders?
Okay, the first one was the memory map was cheap as chips. It cost very little money. Working with the Heritage Lottery Fund is fantastic because during COVID, they gave us free rein. Really, they were wonderful because COVID messed everything up. So I had a small budget for the memory map. And the beauty about it is that we had so much material. We'd made our own documentary films with Battles, Bricks and Bridges. We'd done our own recordings with young people. We had a fantastic person locally who was a professional sound recordist, wonderful stuff. We had our own film makers who we got the old films from and edited them down. And then I came across a guy who was a former cartographer, works for the Ordnance Survey, North Mapping Services, and James came alongside. I had hardly any money. I said, James, will you do it for that? And James says, I will. And we had a wee partnership, and the two of us sat down and we worked the whole thing up. I won't tell you how much it is because his price has gone up since, because there's a lot of people wanting to do this now, but it wasn't an expensive process. So the technical stuff is actually quite easy. They're out there. I can point you towards people who can now do all this. And then the other question was about the community and where it all fits. Great question. We had a steering group set up and they took all of the decisions. It was made up of the local geopark. It was made up of Outdoor Recreation NI, who were the people who were developing our trails and working with us to do all of that. And then it was the communities themselves. So there was a steering group of 7 people and I was working to the project. So they told me what to do. And I wasn't very good at doing what I was told, but they were a great bunch of people, great community, and we all loved working on this particular project.
So we've got just over 5 minutes left, and I think we've got two good questions to sort of wrap things up with. Neil Redfern, he's asked, what other books would you recommend we read? There's something in the landscape narrative you create and read from others that is compelling. And just to wrap it up, what was your favorite story you uncovered during the C2C memory map?
Oh, goodness. Okay. Favorite story. Oh, goodness. I'm probably not going to get that. I mean, if I was here with a wee whiskey, I could probably work out which my favorite one would be. But let me think about that in the meantime. I'll go to Neil's question about the books. I think Glassy is an important person to read because he, more than anybody, deep mapped this place. When you live in a place for 7 years and you go through an approach which is anthropological, ethnographical, he made 50 drawings of houses here. He mapped out the relationships between people, where they moved, intermarried. You know, he did all of that as you would think a person with that set of skills would do. But he's also a great writer, and he wrote with great love for this place. And he's just wonderful. But the other writer that I would recommend is an Englishman called Tim Robinson. And Tim Robinson brings a different set of skills. He moved from England to the west coast of Ireland. He's very well known in Ireland, actually. And he, like Glassy, has written lots of books about Connemara and about the Aran Islands. And he was a cartographer, he was an artist, and he was a mathematician. So he took those skills and he walked everywhere in Connemara and the Aran Islands. He learned a bit of Irish, he learned local history, local politics, and he produced some of the finest writings, again, in the latter half of the 20th century in Ireland. And I would contend that they're both deep mappers. They mine down into a place, they go back into the dark mists of time, from geology, through history, through folklore, through botany, through agriculture, through science, through all of these things. And they bring them the culture and the stories, and they enrich the whole place, and they present it back to you. So Tim Robinson is the person I would recommend. In England, it's Robert McFarland, who is a similar bent, and he writes about place landscapes, and he would be similar, Robert McFarland. And the favorite story that I would have, oh, Neil, you're really putting me on the spot here. There are so many of them. I mean, I have to say, I like the one there that you heard of Viola Wiggins, who was brought up a Protestant, but her mother wouldn't have her boxed in with any particular label. And of course, she's sent to a Catholic school, and the teacher politely tries to exclude her because she thought her mother would want Viola not to go to Catholic education, Catholic religious education. But the mother says, no, we want it. Put her in there because you'll make, if you can make a better Catholic than I can Protestant of her, all the better. So there's lots of things like that. And it shows that we do live in a society here where there is nuance, it's local. We would need to, not necessarily everybody would get that. I don't know if the listeners actually did here today, but that only emphasizes more for me how unique this place actually is, and how we all fit into it and how we interpret it in our own way. And I do hope that we can change policy here that will give more people more access to the places that are out there, but they can't get access to. And we're working on it. It's a long game we have to play, but we have to get more access. We have to get more access to our heritage, our built natural and cultural heritage in the landscape.
I couldn't think of a better way to finish this wonderful lecture. We're coming up to 8 o'clock now, and Barney, I want to thank you so much for sharing this project with us. We have so much to learn from it. And I also want to thank everyone who's come tonight. We will have the following lecture coming up. It will be led by Mike Benson, Director of the Scottish Cranach Centre, and we'll have much more details on that available on the CBA website. And if everyone who's attended tonight, if you could please complete the feedback survey, there should be a link for it in the chat. And again, Barney, thank you so much. It is absolutely wonderful. And I'm sure we could talk about it so much more over that whiskey you mentioned. But thank you again tonight for everything.
You're very, very welcome, Jeanette. Thank you. And thank you, Claire. And thank you, Neil.